Afternoon everybody. I thought what we'd do today is show you how to make a gutter ball board. The first thing you're going to need to do is find a nice old bit of wood. So hopefully in your garage or shed somewhere you've got something like this. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. There are proper dimensions for gutter ball boards, but we're just going to use whatever we can find in the garage. So if you can find something about this sort of size, it's probably ideal. Now the first thing we're going to have to do is plan out what we're going to do on this piece of wood. So I'll just stop the thing now and I'll show you how we're going to make it up. First thing you'll need is a pencil and a ruler so that you can sort of get some nice straight lines on there. This is a special kind of ruler that you might have in Dad's workshop or somewhere nearby. It's called a set square, and importantly it has this sort of angle on it here, and it's going to help us get some straight lines. One of the first things I'm going to do is check to see which is the most square of the edges, because that's going to become important to us later on. Now I'll check this and see that there, yeah, that's really good, that looks quite nice, because we're going to chop off a square of this first that's going to be our cross bits. I'll explain what that means later. So we need to measure exactly how wide this bit is here, which comes to 188 millimeters. So we'll do the same thing, we'll go to 188 millimeters down here. Line there. Now you don't need one of these, you can do it with a regular ruler, but it's just a wee bit easier. And then line across there. We're going to do some cutting in a second. Then from there to the corner, and that's going to give us two triangles out of that square. So those two triangles are going to be at the ends of our boards, so we'll cut those off in a little bit. First thing we're going to do though is make this cut here, and we're going to make sure our cut goes on that side because we want to save the rest of this as the two boards. So it's going to be quite a short one, but it'll work really well. Okay, next thing is a saw. I'm going to clamp the piece of wood down so it doesn't slip around while I'm cutting it. You don't need a clamp, it just makes it a bit easier if you have got one. The other thing you can do is kneel on it or hold it with your hand while you're sawing. This just makes it that little bit easier when you're doing it by yourself. Next thing is the saw itself. Obviously this is going to be quite sharp and dangerous, so do check with your folks before you use a saw. And if you've not used one before, do take your time. You might even have an old piece of wood that you can practice with first. The trick with a saw is to keep your lines really straight, start nice and slow. Now it's not cutting much yet, we'll get to that in a second. What we're aiming for is a nice sort of barking sound, a bit like a dog might make, and then you'll hear that in a second. Keeping it as straight as we can up and down. Now, what we've ended up with is a square, and we're going to eventually cut this down through here so that we can get two triangles out of it, and they'll be our supports for the board. And they'll probably just slightly long, but what they're going to do is be the bits that get attached onto the sides of it like that. So what we'll do now is measure this up and cut it into two halves that are going to be each side of the board. Again, the trick with measuring is to be as accurate as you can. So we've got 91.8. So we've got to go half of that. So the easiest way to do it is in chunks. So half of 90 is 45. Put that there. And 1.8, half of that of course is 9. So if we go 45.9 there, there's our halfway mark. this mark here. I'll chop this in half. And just double check. Now, one of the old things that builders always tell you is measure twice, cut once. So we're just going to make sure that both those sides are close enough to equal. So that comes to 45.8. 45.9. That's slightly longer on that side. So what we'll do is we'll make our cut on this side here, and then do the same thing again. We'll clamp it down, we'll cut it in half as nice and neatly as we can, and we'll have the two faces of our board. Pretty easy stuff to do. Slightly that way. Nice. Now, there's going to be some splinters and bits and pieces on there, but we'll sand those off later. Right now, we're just going to get started putting our thing together. We need one more cut though to get our triangles. What we should find is that these two bits of wood are almost exactly the same length, which is just going to be bang on for us. Now, our design is going to be ending up a little bit like that. In other designs they have them so that they overlap like that, or like that. But our one's going to be slightly different because of the way we've cut our end bits. Okay, so we'll just put these aside for the moment. And this one's a bit trickier. Cutting across the grain is just that little bit harder, so we'll just see how we go with it. So what we'll have now, two lovely triangles which will be the end of our boards. So what we could probably do now is just give them just a quick brush with some sandpaper so that these splinters don't become a problem for us while we're putting the rest of it together. Nasty splinters. We can give it a bit of sand later on. In the meantime, we're just trying to get some good working surfaces. Now, here's the fun bit. We get to start to put it together. We're going to be using these as our support bits. I'm trying to choose the nicest face. I think that one's a wee bit sort of broken there, so that's going to sit against that. Like that. And we'll have a nice strong board. In fact, all you need is one face, but the thing ends up stronger if you use two. I'm going to use screws and glue for this. It'll make it super duper strong and it'll last pretty much anything we give to it. Now, I'll come back in a second, I'll get some stuff. So, to make things neat and predictable and work out better generally, what we're going to do is look here and see roughly the width of the wood here. Mark out a line. We're going to use this to mark out some spots that we'll drill through. So if we just draw one straight line there, I reckon three screw holes will do it. So one there. You don't want it too close to the edge, otherwise it will misbehave on you, and it can't be too close down here because you need some depth for the screw to go into. So we're going to go there and one in the middle, and we're going to pre-drill the holes so that when the screws go through they don't split this wood and they spend all their time sinking into this wood here. So don't need him for the moment. Type of drill doesn't need anything else, and we're just going to pop some holes through there. Just make sure that you've got it nice and straight. And if you want to be really fancy, you can countersink these holes as well. That's just a way of making so that that head on the screw can actually go right into the wood. So I just choose something around about that diameter there. You don't even need to put the drill in, you can just sort of chisel it out like this. And it just carves out a little bit of wood so that the head of the screw will seat in there nicely. You can go to the effort of putting it in here properly, but it just means you've got to change your drill bit a lot. And that's our starting point for the next thing. So, ultimately, that's going to be joined into this bit here. So, we can say, right, we know that's going to go there and there. We can start putting it together. Now, this is wood glue, but it's the same as the PVA that you might have at your house anyway. It's nothing special or fancy, it's just ordinary PVA glue really. We have this sort of stuff at school as well, and it's very easy to get hold of. So you've probably got some in your garage somewhere. I'm going to put some on this because it usually pays to let it sit for a wee while before you actually stick it together. So I'm going to put some on there early. I'm going to make sure I don't lose that. Classic easy mistake to make. Just brush off some of the excess there and spread the glue on just like that. This little bit's a little bit fiddly, it's the first one. After this they're easier because everything's in place. So before I put the screws in, I'm just going to hold that there. I've switched to these longer screws. I think they'll actually sink into the wood a little bit better. You can use nails, like hammer and nails to do this, but it's going to be much harder to keep it neat, and it won't last as long. The screws will hold it really, really well. All right. So now that one side is done, I'll go ahead and attach these other ones, but you don't need to watch all of that. Hopefully you'll be having some ideas about how you can do this for yourself. So the next stage obviously is to do pretty much the same as we've done here. We'll get this one attached in a similar fashion, and then the last bit of wood that goes on there. So I'll just clip this off for a second and we'll come back to you. And there we have it, pretty much done. So as you can see, it's held together with triangles. These two rectangular faces here are what you bounce the ball off, and it's pretty stout. Now if you wanted to make it extra super duper strong, you could even glue and screw a piece of wood into here. It would make it a slightly heavier too, which probably wouldn't hurt. But we'll try this out as it is, and we'll see if it's strong enough, because this wood here is pretty thick, and the length between there and there is quite short, so it should be good enough. Time for a test try. Well, that seemed to work fine. Thanks to Jax for the loan of the ball. This is something you can make at home, and it helps you to practice your catching and throwing. Just improve those fine motor skills with a tennis ball. Well done, you guys. Have a go at home. Be safe. Ask your mum and dad to use the tools. Catch you later on. Bye.